There are some people who, as soon as they are hired for a job, roll over and collapse. They are going to do absolutely nothing more than the bare minimum to continue collecting paychecks for as long as they possibly can. And this charade will only end when the hiring organization has either had enough of the behavior and or they've gathered enough evidence to where they feel confident in firing the employee and confident in the sense that they will not get sued for firing the employee. So in the United States, this is actually quite common. And one way to think of this is that the employee looks at this as a race. And for them, the finish line, the end of the race, is when they get hired. As soon as they cross that finish line, they are going to roll over and collapse. So I refer to this employee as the rollover employee. And the imagery that I have is this beached whale that I have on the screen. And so we have a beached whale. The whale is wearing a short sleeve button up shirt with a tie and a wristwatch, and it is flopped over on the beach. It is flat on its back. And that is how I think of these employees. And what's especially difficult is not only that you have this bureaucracy in place with so many Fortune 500 companies, these larger companies, but also government offices, and then other mid-sized companies, and sometimes even small businesses, where the employees know how to game the system. They know that it can be difficult to fire them, and that they can keep this up. They can keep this type of behavior up for months without being fired because these different organizations, these different entities are so fearful of lawsuits. So, who is the rollover employee? Well, they're the employee who will show up to the workplace and look for a place to sleep. So, they're going to fall asleep while they're supposed to be working. Or they will just get on their phone and start playing on social media immediately after clocking in. At best, they'll spend time talking to employees. They will avoid customers at all costs. They will avoid serving people. They will avoid their workplace responsibilities. They'll go into hiding. They're going to do everything besides work. To them, all they're trying to do is clock in or be physically present to the point where they are legally the hiring organization is legally obligated to pay them. And so that's really what they're doing. They're just showing up and they are rolling over. They are doing nothing more than the absolute bare minimum. And in fact, they may even be in conflict with their superior, their manager or whoever it is. Even though they're subordinates, they may be in conflict with them. They may argue with them about their responsibilities and tell them that they are not going to fulfill their responsibilities because they don't think that they should. I think my theory is that many of these people, some of them don't care, but I think that there's also many that don't understand that they're being paid for adding incremental value to the organization. So they think that these organizations just have money because they have money. So let's just say it's a large company. Well, the company is rich and they should just pay me because I'm here working. And they don't understand that the only reason that they're getting paid is because they're supposed to be performing these responsibilities. And they think the money just shows up because they don't understand how the business actually operates and how the money is actually generated that is used to pay their paychecks. So I think that is the case. But of course, what's also existing is that they're simply not accepting any responsibility for accepting those paychecks. So I'm going to continue on down my notes. And one thing I have here, one bullet point, is that this process continues because, in part, because in the United States, what is common is that when a someone is eventually fired and they're looking for a job elsewhere, and this new hiring, let's say it's a company, this new hiring company seeks to find out the past history of this employer. When they call other employers, what will typically happen is the other employer won't actually reveal the real experience that they had with this employee. And that is because they are afraid of a defamation lawsuit. So, because of this fear, they will only provide these very limited and basic employment details. So, they'll confirm the dates of employment, they'll confirm the job title, the responsibilities, etc. But what they won't do is they won't tell them just the actual, here's our actual experience, because again, they are afraid of legal action being taken against them. And of course, that's also what keeps these bad employees, these rollover employees hired for so long, is because they understand that the so many of these different organizations, these different entities, they their policy is that they need to have documentation to protect themselves from wrongful termination lawsuits. So there's this charade that goes on where there needs to be written performance reviews, formal warnings and or write-ups. Then there needs to be performance improvement plans, records of policy violations or misconduct, documentations of meetings, and then evidence that the employee received feedback, etc. These bullet points are often all required internally by the companies and by the different organizations who have hired these employees. And so, because of this bureaucracy, the employees are allowed to continue just showing up, just simply being a rollover employee. And they know this, so they can get away with this for several months. And in fact, in some government offices, it's really almost impossible for them to get fired. The only way they're going to get fired is if they do something absolutely egregious. But it's common enough that there are positions where even if an employee simply shows up, they will not get fired because the organization just accepts it and moves on. So it's quite common here, and I'm going to just scroll through and see if there are any last bullet points I wanted to go through on this video. But yeah, this really just comes down to bureaucracy, and then there are just, as a result of so many bad decisions and so many accepted workplace culture practices, this has become where now HR divisions are afraid of firing people because of the very things that were meant to protect employees are now protecting the bad employees, and so everyone loses as a result. This causes costs to rise for consumers. And of course, consumers also get worse service because employees are not fulfilling their responsibilities. But this is something that's common. It's something that I've noticed anecdotally. I've talked to other people about. This is something that is more common than you might expect. And I think what needs to happen is that these different entities accept being sued, because the employees that are absolutely just showing up and rolling over are costing them much more in the aggregate than the lawsuits would. And so I think they need to accept that lawsuits will happen and just instead work on having an organization that is thriving and employees that are all adding value, versus accepting that there will be some employees who are rollover employees and collapse as soon as they get hired.